Good morning, everybody. It is Kathy here at the Magical Urban Vegetable Garden. And if you are having weather like I am, I'm sure you are probably out and about in the sun and enjoying the spring. But I just had and I some things I wanted to share with you. I get questions about how do you plan out your garden, and there's lots of great tips and ideas out there and everything, but if you're just getting started, it can be a little bit confusing. So I put together three basic tips to help you get started on planning this out. Hi, Mary. How are you? Um, so the first thing, and this might seem really simplistic, but get paper and pen. I like using graph paper. Okay, I have a notebook that is at the end of its days. I have the rip out pages. It inspires me when I sit down with graph paper. I don't know what it is, but I can sit and scribble things out, plan them out, ideas, all sorts of things. Maybe that doesn't inspire you, but find something that does. Something else I really highly suggest is getting yourself a notebook. It doesn't have to be an expensive one. I found this one at the dollar store. I think it cost $1.50. It just has lined paper. And what I do is I'll follow it through year to year. This will contain several years, and usually I'll just end up with a marker on the front. What I do is month by month track. I'll just have like the open sheets, and I'll put you know, maybe what the weather was is kind of like that month, whether we had a late winter, whether we had an early hot spring, that sort of thing, and just kind of graph out draw out my garden, what's where. And then on the next pages, I'll keep track of things like the seeds that I planted. I can go back and say, oh, these didn't do so great. Maybe I won't plant this kind again. And so over the year, over the season, I'll have, maybe a dozen pages, maybe 2 dozen pages of notes just on different things that have been planted. And then in following years, I can go back and I can double check and see what it is that I've done, because you don't remember. You always think you're going to remember, but you don't remember what it is that you've planted, what you've tried where. I can look at my little diagrams and go, oh yeah, I tried planting that there and it didn't do so well for this reason. Maybe it was too boggy or too hot for that plant, or it needed more shade, which was why I moved it. And so give yourself notes and a reference guide, because gardening is always evolving, right? You're always going to find better places for different plants, and it's kind of a guessing game sometimes. Once you have the basic layout of your yard or your home or whatever, though, drawn out, or your balcony or whatever it is that you're wanting to, whatever it is that you're designing, um, figure out the directions of your home. Get the compass on your phone or whatever, and figure out your north, east, south, and west. Okay, the sun is going to come up in the east, especially through the season. It's going to come right overhead, more to like overhead south, and set in the west, of course. The north side, you might get morning sun depending on how your property is situated, or your home, or whatever, but you tend to have more shade. So the things that you plant on that side of the house, whether it's perennials or annuals, is going to be very different from what you plant on the south side if it gets full sun. And I mean, other things to diagram in there, once you've figured out your directions, is there any tall trees on the on the property line or from your neighbors? Think back to last summer. In the heat of the summer, was there a really good shade tree that kind of cast across and gave you a break from the heat? Maybe there was none, and that's really annoying, and you want to fix that down the road with some sort of shrubs or a fruit tree or something. So once you kind of have the directions of where everything is and where your heat is, I mean, your garden beds, whether you're doing raised beds or no-till or whatever it is that you're setting up, you can decide what it is that you're going to plant. So the places that really like the heat, I mean, you're going to plant like your corn and beans and all your heat-loving plants, tomatoes and peppers and things like that. Things that like the cooler side, maybe they like the morning sun, but they really don't do so well in the heat, you're going to plant in those more shady areas, right? And when you're planning this out, this is the third thing. Make a list, and don't limit yourself on this. This is just a dream list of everything you would ever like to plant. Just scribble it out: shrubs, trees, bushes, weird plants, vegetables that you want to try. All these things, because once you have a bucket list, you can start planning out. Okay, this year I want to get these longer term things in. I want to get that peach tree in at the corner, and I want to find a space off on the side where maybe, say, something like rhubarb is going to go, because that is a really great perennial food. But it needs to be in its own space because it does get a very long taproot, and so you're not going to be transplanting it from place to place. So you might want it off further in a corner of the yard just to give it its own area. And so when you kind of plan these things out, then you have the central space to be planting all your annual stuff, like your lettuces and greens and corn and all the things that you want, cabbages and broccoli and whatever it is. Like, you can plan these things out. So I hope that makes sense. The thing is that none of this usually happens unless you have a lot of extra help. It may not happen all in one season for you. You might need to plan it out. The other thing I do suggest is, if you're planning on any kinds of perennials, and again, this is going to your shrubs like your raspberry, blackberry bushes, maybe you're putting in dwarf or semi-dwarfing fruit trees, because you've figured out that, you can fit a couple of them in where you are. Any of those things that take longer to get going, you might want to get them started first, to give them a head start, and then you can worry about the quicker growing things, right? Because your fruit trees can take a few years to get going. The other thing I suggest, I guess I should have made this a list of 5, but anyway, the other thing I would suggest, plan out how it is that you want to water. A lot of times, I've seen so many people who, after the fact, they put in greenhouses and raised beds and they've done all this work, and then it was like, you know what? Crap. We should have put in a water line so that we had a tap or a couple of taps right in the center of the garden so we could set up automated watering. And we didn't think of that. And so then they have to go back, or it's just such a big pain that it ends up not happening. So, they're hauling hoses around and stuff. So if you're planning on doing something like that, try and plan in where that would go as well. If you need permits from your city or your whatever it is, that, figure those things out ahead of time. Maybe you don't want to bother with them at all, but just think about it so that later on it's not like, oh, I wish I'd thought of that. So I hope that helps. Mary, thank you for stopping by, and anybody else who is watching this after the fact, leave me a comment below and let me know if this helps. I would love to hear from you, and I'm going to go back to getting all my fruit trees fertilized and watered, because it is that time, and soon I will have pictures for you of all the blooming cherry trees and apple trees. So bye for now. Have a great and sunny day.